My coworker, Karen, thinks she knows everything but she is out of control and keeps breaking all the rules. How do I deal with this? I've been working at this company for almost a year now, and I really enjoy my job. I get along with most of my coworkers, except for one. She's kind of a pain. We'll call her Karen to protect her identity, or maybe just because that's a really fitting name. Karen isn't technically a marketer, but she does a really good job at her actual job. The problem is she always thinks she knows more than everyone else about marketing. When she has an opinion, she tries to make everyone on her team agree with her. She's like a broken record, constantly saying, "My whole team thinks we should." But it's just her making it up. Sometimes she's able to convince some of the managers to agree with her. That's what really frustrates me, when she manages to change decisions that have already been made, which happens far too often. I try to be kind. I know why Karen is so pushy. In her last job, she had free rein to do whatever she wanted. Now, with our company growing, we're trying to give it a more professional look and reach a wider audience. But Karen has a way of getting in the way. It's so frustrating. I spend countless hours working to create a brand that reflects our professionalism, but Karen ruins it with her own, often bizarre creations in Canva or Photoshop. It makes me want to scream and throw my computer out the window. Sometimes I swear loudly while staring at the screen. Luckily, I work from home, or my neighbors would think I'm insane. She's driving me crazy, and it's costing our company a lot of time and money. My boss, you can bet, is no fan of Karen. She actually hates her. To avoid face-to-face confrontations, I use our company chat to talk to Karen, but only when I absolutely have to. To make things easier and more organized, my boss and I set up a system to track marketing requests. It's an amazing system, where we can see everything that's in progress, and it's been really helpful for all of us. Well, everyone except for Karen. Our system worked well for a while until one day, a couple of weeks ago. In the company chat, I shared details about our new landing page. This landing page was going to be a really big deal. It would connect all our recent research to our main campaign. It would be perfect for our big upcoming event. As usual, Karen launched into one of her ridiculous rants. She always tries to find ways to get rid of my projects. This time, it was even more crazy because she tried to convince everyone that she knew best. She was determined to change everything. But Karen's boss intervened. He put a stop to it before it got too far. "We've got to use data," he told her. "Stop with the personal opinions, Karen. Besides, the project is all set up, so it'll take some of the workload away from you." I was shocked. He'd never done anything like that before. That was the first time anyone had stood up to her. The only time that happened before was a few months ago during a video meeting. We were all gathered for this big event, and Karen went ballistic at me. It was so embarrassing for the whole team. They couldn't handle her screaming at me like that. Since that incident, I've refused to participate in any video meetings because it always gets too intense with Karen. But the best part was coming. The person who's in charge of the research came back with the statistics to prove that I was right. The data proved she was wrong. I had two people backing me up. Karen had zero arguments. At least I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Karen texted me later. It seems she was trying to salvage her reputation by finishing a campaign pack. It was already late, but I thought it was nice of her. It would have been helpful if she'd sent it a couple of weeks ago, but that's beside the point. I opened it and saw her work, and you're not going to believe what I saw. I'm serious. It was the worst. I literally yelled out loud in frustration, and it would have been embarrassing if I hadn't been home alone. She had decided to make a completely new logo for our company. We have super strict branding guidelines, with a certain typography logo and a specific icon that has to be used with it. She ignored those guidelines entirely. She used our icon, but instead of the logo, she made a totally new brand. We're only allowed to use this icon with one of our other products, not the main company brand. It was such a huge violation. I tried to be as diplomatic as possible. I wanted to be polite to her. It was late when I asked her about the logo, explaining that our logos need to be approved by my boss. The logo, she told me, was totally fine because she emailed my boss about it. It took her a few hours to get back to me because we're on different schedules, and she had a response for me, but I'm sure you can already guess how it went. I thought maybe she would apologize and offer to remove it. It would be a pretty reasonable response. Instead, she just dug herself into a deeper hole by doing the dumbest thing she could have done. "I didn't think it was a big deal," she wrote. "I sent your boss an email." Oh, I almost threw my computer. She sent an email to my boss, who hates her, and explained why she was changing our logo, saying it was going to bring in a ton of new clients. It's ridiculous because I had generated more clients than the whole team last year. She's a total mess. I can only imagine what my boss will think. She's on vacation now, and when she comes back, she's going to have so many emails to read. I feel terrible for her. The last thing she needs right now is more of Karen's madness. And not only did she skip using the new system for approvals that my boss and I worked so hard to create, but she also copied Karen's boss on the email. I have a feeling Karen's going to be in for a very unpleasant day. I don't know if I should be more worried for her or for myself. Maybe I could have prevented this whole thing if I'd been less polite, but then again, I wouldn't want to get yelled at by Karen like the time during the video meeting. The situation is insane. The worst part is that I'm sure my boss will end up yelling at Karen and maybe even firing her. My boss is generally pretty calm and polite. The thought of her screaming at someone is funny, but at the same time, it's scary. I can't imagine what it'll be like. Update. So, I had this big post, right, and all these people commented on it, asking about the drama. They were probably super curious about Karen, and a few of them might even have hated Karen in their past jobs, but they are going to be disappointed with the news. I live in a place where firing people is very hard. It's the same with my company. My boss actually ignored the email that Karen sent. I thought it would be interesting to see the mess she'd made. It was way more ridiculous than I ever could have imagined. I was so distracted by the logo that I hadn't even looked at anything else she'd been creating. It was so insane. I almost had a nervous breakdown. My boss reviewed her whole portfolio of weird ideas and promised to get back to Karen and her boss, but I've been kept out of the loop. This is Karen's mess. She's the one who disobeyed our policies and procedures. This whole thing is bringing a much bigger problem to light. My boss also said there were issues higher up in the company. It was basically a huge breakdown in management that allowed Karen to run wild like this. She shouldn't have gotten so far, let alone be so far behind on the timeline for her projects. Everything should have been done weeks ago. My boss had a good laugh over Karen's logo. She was laughing at all of Karen's crazy ideas and how late she was. All that time she spent making it was basically wasted. It was a complete mess. Thankfully, we have a lot of protections for employees, so they can't just get fired on the spot. The process could take weeks or even months, unless, of course, someone gets caught in a major act of gross misconduct. Karen doesn't quite reach that level of egregiousness. But it was helpful to have those policies in place, and those rules were put there because of Karen, so at least the branding was safe, for now. It just adds to the ongoing drama that my boss and I had to deal with all this, and our hair is starting to turn gray. As for Karen's fate, maybe she'll just get a warning and finally get on board, or maybe she'll get a sudden new job opportunity. I work from home, so even if they fired her, I'd never have to see it. Update 2. So, my boss wrote an email to Karen's team with a message saying, "Don't use this logo." She said it was best to stick with the brand illustration library, and she provided a brief explanation about why the logo didn't work. It was clear that Karen's logo wasn't working, but Karen couldn't let it go. She didn't like the official library, so it was basically a flat-out rejection. She managed to delete the logo, but she's so stubborn. She doesn't seem to get it. And even after all of this, it's clear she's going to cause more trouble. Oh, dear. Update 3. Things have been relatively peaceful for months, but suddenly this week, chaos exploded again. I guess we have Karen to thank for this mess. It turned out that a few of her teammates had been sending Karen all their creative work, instead of using the right channels for submissions. My boss has been busy with meetings and meetings with Karen's boss, to figure out how to make sure he has some control over his staff. It's getting pretty clear that Karen's boss and her team leader don't actually have any power over her, or maybe they just don't want to bother. Another teammate opened up to me, saying Karen was telling everyone what she wanted them to do. Apparently, they all thought her ideas were great, and they're too afraid to do more than create a few simple documents. Karen's boss and the team leader haven't the faintest clue this is going on, and I am pretty sure Karen is pulling the strings from behind the scenes. She has become a puppet master. The drama is definitely heating up, and the higher-ups in management are going to have to deal with the consequences. My boss has also said clearly that anyone who sends anything off-brand that's not submitted through the right channels is going to get into serious trouble. We're in the process of making changes so that things don't fall apart again. This whole situation is crazy. Karen wants to make huge changes to our branding because, of course, she thinks it's too corporate, and she doesn't like it. She's already created another ridiculous request, where she is asking to change our whole brand, and of course, she wants to finish everything by the end of November, even though she didn't even start. The request was promptly rejected, and I know there's going to be fallout. She's either going to keep bugging her bosses, trying to make her ideas a reality, or she'll probably pick on her team and make it miserable until she gets what she wants. I know there's no way this is going to be the end of the Karen saga. But it's really reassuring that my boss is on my side. She's the real hero in this story. Update 4. This is probably my last update for now. Everything's still in a major shake-up, but it's finally happening at the higher levels of the company. Karen's bosses, as well as some of her teammates, have really messed up. They're all going to have to deal with the repercussions. She might have gotten rid of the logo as requested, but Karen took a few creative liberties with the illustrations, right? The ones she'd added were embargoed and shouldn't even have been part of our materials, so I haven't been able to use them in marketing because they were unavailable. And that wasn't the end of it. Karen didn't just leave them on a page on our website. No. She posted them on a different, completely unrelated website. This has gone far beyond the usual Karen mayhem. And to top it all off, she's just sent in another request for permission to create another set of designs using Illustrator. At least this time she's trying to get permission. It's a small victory. My boss is really concerned and already gave her some advice on how she can try to make those designs better, to try and get it closer to our brand guidelines. It doesn't really matter because my boss and I both know Karen isn't going to do it. She'll make the illustrations her way, and she'll probably use them at a business event. There are just so many reports to file now, because Karen has gone completely off the rails and there are so many other people involved in this mess. They're all in trouble. I spent so much time and effort building up a strong marketing structure and making our systems secure. I thought I'd prepared for just about every eventuality. It seems Karen found a way to break them all, but at least I made it so Karen couldn't damage the company's image. It seems like things are getting taken seriously now, at the top. They're finally starting to talk to the right people and have some harsh, stern discussions. I hope this is really the end of the story. But it will be a while before it's over. For now, Karen and her colleagues are going to get a much-needed reality check. Next story. My uncle, a war veteran, died and left a video message for his family, including some unpleasant surprises. My Uncle Hodge was a special kind of person. He served in the war, you know, the big one, World War II. He worked on planes, fixing them and making them fly. He got really good at it and became the boss of all the plane fixers at his base. After the war, he met Eve, my grandma's sister. They got married and stayed together for ages, a whole 45 years. They didn't have kids though, because of some problems. Uncle Hodge got a job at the coal mine in our village. It was called the pit, because it was, well, a big hole in the ground. He was really good at his job and became the boss of all the miners. He was a natural leader, that's for sure. Hodge and Eve, some of his friends from the war, and my grandma, went on trips to Spain every year before they retired. They even went after they stopped working, whenever they felt like it. My grandma was the only family Hodge had left, but Eve had lots and lots of family, too many. The problem with big families is that sometimes, some people aren't very nice. There were only a few good people in Eve's family. It was easier to count the bad ones. Uncle Hodge said, "The trouble with eggs is, you can only tell the good ones by spinning them quick, or dunking them in water." I don't fancy going to prison. He was always careful with his money, only spending what he needed. He saved as much as he could, except for his trips to Spain, of course. When I turned 18, Uncle Hodge took me to the pub for my first beer. My dad worked nights and had to sleep, so he couldn't come with us. Hodge wasn't drinking that day, which was unusual for him. He always went to the working men's club, a place for guys to hang out and have drinks. "Hodge, why aren't you drinking?" I asked. "I feel bad taking your money if you aren't getting any too." He said, "Well, I guess one can't hurt. Don't tell Nip." He called my grandma, Nip, but I was just told I have diabetes, type 2. I don't want to take any chances. "I'll keep your secret, but you should tell her." "Just in case," I said. "I'll tell her when the time is right, kiddo." "Now finish your drink before it gets warm," he said. We were busy chatting and didn't notice Eve's nephew in the corner. 5 years went by. I saw Uncle Hodge a few times, not as much as I wanted to because of work and him going overseas. One day I went to see my grandparents and saw my grandma crying. Uncle Hodge was sitting on the sofa. Put the kettle on, kid. I need to tell you something, he said. I made coffee for my grandparents, hot chocolate for myself, and green tea for Hodge. Now listen up, he said. I haven't got much time left on this planet. You're not to cry over me. I've been told I have a really bad kind of cancer. And to be honest, I'm f***ing glad to be leaving this place. To Gran. Sorry, Nip. I know you don't want to hear this, but it has to be said. You and yours will be taken care of course, but don't tell Eve and her family. To everyone, I've made a new will. I want everyone to come to the reading. I've prepared a little gift for the family. Soon after that, we found out that Hodge had passed away. We kept it from my grandma that he had taken his own life. It would have broken her heart. Uncle Hodge was always independent, so he made this decision so my grandma wouldn't have to see him get worse. He had asked us to come to the reading, his will reading, which was the only thing he ever asked of us. We saw people we never knew, never even heard of. Some of them looked pretty angry at the table. Now that we are all here, please watch this video. Hodge has a message for you all, the lawyer said. On the video, we saw Hodge. Now then, I imagine this will be a shock to most of you, but I had cancer, he said. If you're watching this, I want you to know that some of you made my last few years good. Others, well, we'll get to you. To my side of the family, not one of you came to me to see if I was alright or needed any help. You just asked if I wanted a hand with things. I thank you for that. I've never had anyone do anything for me unless they were my soldiers in the war. I wasn't going to change that just because I was leaving this world. You knew me better than most of my close family. If something was wrong, you'd know it. That's good. Now, let's get to the good part. To Eve's family. Where do I begin with you lot? When I took Nip's grandson out for his first pint, somebody overheard me telling him I had diabetes. What a shame, you said. You said it's a shame it wasn't cancer. Guess you got your wish, EH? And the rest of you, you always asked me for money when you visited. That's okay, I didn't mind lending it to you. But I did expect to get it back. So, here's how this is going to work. I've put my money in a trust with my oldest friend, the lawyer. No one is getting a thing until Eve dies. Don't bother asking. Eve can stay in the house I worked my butt off for until she dies or has to go to a nursing home. The house can't be sold until after she dies. She may be lazy, but she's still my wife. Once she dies, the house will be sold at a reasonable price and the money from that will be added to my money and then split with the family. Eve's money is hers to do with as she likes, but it can't be added to my money. The lawyer has been given instructions on this. Now, here's how my money will be split. If you borrowed money from me and paid it back, you'll get a fair share based on how old you were when I died. If you borrowed money and didn't pay it back, you'll still get a cut, but minus what you owe me. Some of you, I hope you know that I'm laughing at you from beyond the grave. You deserve this. Nip, my only living family, you'll get the biggest share of whatever's there to do with as you wish. If you don't want to keep it, the lawyer will help you with anything you need. Trust him, he's a good guy. He saved my ass more than once during the war. Nip's sons will get a good share to help them with whatever they need. And their children will be provided for too. To my mom, I never heard anything bad about you, so you are getting a cut. Like it or lump it. You've been a great help in the last couple of weeks. I called you at 3 a.m. to get me out of the bathtub because I couldn't do it myself. Sorry you had to see that. You didn't have to help me the next day with painting, either. If you weren't already in your career, you'd make a good craftsman. You'll get a cut. The amount will be determined by the future. Use it however you want. To the rest of you, I am f***ing disgusted to have known you. I mentioned earlier that Eve can live in the house until she dies or goes to a nursing home. If that happens, nobody is to live in the house. I don't want anyone I don't trust living in there. Now stop crying and go about your lives. Hodge. Well, you can imagine people were mad about that. We nodded at the lawyer and left. Not long after the funeral, Eve went to a retirement home, using her own money, not Hodge's, of course, because his money was locked up, as he'd requested. She had enough to last for years and years. A couple of months later, we were all called back to the lawyer's office, feeling a little confused. We were told to watch another video. Hodge appeared again. I'm not surprised this video's being played. Some of you just don't listen. If you're watching this, it means that someone I don't trust is living in my house. I don't care who it is. The lawyer has instructions on what to do next. For his voice and his sanity, I'll tell you this. Whoever is in the house against my wishes is now kicked off the will. If the others feel they want to share their money with you, that's their loss. You're not getting a penny from me. It turned out, my cousin, who bullied me in school, and her family, which included her on and off boyfriend, 2 kids, and a dog, had moved into the house after talking Eve into leaving. They thought they needed the house. But they hadn't counted on nosy neighbors. Uncle Hodge had asked the neighbors to watch the house, and if they saw anyone new or moving in, they should tell the lawyer. They got a cut of Hodge's money in return. They were good people. The lesson? Don't mess with a war vet.